The fierce commander of the North is rumored to be monstrous and evil, said to be the living king of hell. He is cruel beyond compare, licentious and merciless. Not even his 9 concubines were spared from his brutality, as each of them died a cruel death. With no concubine to quell his lust and cruel nature, he demanded to take the prefectural magistrate's daughter. Fearing that she would be the 10th concubine to die brutally in his hands, the magistrate's daughter ordered for the mute slave to take her place. The slave is very beautiful with soft white skin, expressive eyes with lush eyelashes, lips rosy and kissable. On their wedding night, the mute slave, who took the identity of the magistrate's daughter, sat obediently on their wedding bed, waiting for her new husband, praying to any god who will listen, hoping that the North Garrison Prince will not realize that he, the new concubine, is, in fact, a man. Long ago, there was once a fierce commander who brutally defeated his enemies. According to the rumors, the commander of the North is 8 feet tall, with a curly beard that covers his face. His look is fierce and unforgiving. He won battle after battle, leaving behind a pile of corpses in his wake. In the novel, this earned him the moniker, the living king of hell. As soon as he enters the battlefield, his enemies will not dare fight back. They would surrender under his might easily. He is also known to be licentious and frequently indulges in the pleasures of the flesh. Apart from his wife, he keeps 9 other concubines to entertain him. Today is a special day. Inside the commander's mansion, a figure decked in red silk and gold embroidery sits on the bed. The figure is a beautiful bride waiting for her new husband to join her. The bride is a rare beauty with pearlescent hands peeking out from her expensive robes. With a red veil covering her bewitching features, she bites her lips in worry. She's probably just having some honeymoon jitters. The bride has a single thought in mind. I'll be dead if my new husband finds out that I'm a man. What? So, here's what happened that led to the bride's perilous predicament. The commander of the North demanded to take the magistrate's daughter to be his concubine. The messenger even had the gall to tell the magistrate to rejoice. The messenger haughtily relayed the order to the magistrate, leaving no arguments to be raised. The magistrate, fearing the consequence of disobeying the commander of the North, accepted the order and brought the subject up to his daughter. Shenyu, the magistrate's daughter, cried in despair. She has heard of the commander's cruel deeds and how he treated his concubines. None of his 9 concubines survived, as they were mercilessly tortured to death. She vehemently refused to marry him. If I were in her shoes, I wouldn't want to marry him either. The magistrate is helpless. Their wealth cannot compare to the commander's, and his political power is weak. He does not have enough influence to reject the demands of the commander, whom even the emperor fears. With a dejected heart, he tells his daughter that there isn't a single thing he can do to refuse the marriage. In desperation, the magistrate's daughter remembered the mute slave who lives among the servants. She exclaims that the slave is even more beautiful than any woman. She heard of the rumors that the commander of the North favors the company of both men and women. She leans in towards her father conspiratorially as she whispers her plan to escape the cruel fate that awaits her. The following day, the mute slave and his mother were called to the courtyard. The magistrates announced that the mute slave would take his daughter's place. The mute slave was awarded the name Shenyu, while his daughter's name was changed to Shenfei. He ordered that the mute slave shall ride the bridal palanquin and marry the commander of the North. Knowing the cruel fate that waits for her son, the mother cried sorrowfully as she held on to him. She loved her son dearly. This is heartbreaking. The other servants cruelly scolded them for being ungrateful and urged the mute slave to sign the papers with his thumbprint. The magistrate promised to care for his sick mother in exchange for this favor. Knowing that this was his mother's only chance to live comfortably in her old age, the mute slave accepted the offer, sealing his fate. The magistrate listened to his daughter's plan. He set the mute slave to take his daughter's place. The mute slave is a man, but his features are delicate and lovely. He is even more beautiful than any woman in the land. Hoping that the commander of the North would be enchanted by this beauty, he took the risk to save his daughter's future. The mute slave, who is now named Shenyu, donned the red bridal clothes and rode in a wedding palanquin to the commander's mansion. A celebration was held, but everything went by like a blur to Shenyu. A majestically clad man approaches the door of the bridal chambers. The man was dressed in elegant attire embroidered with golden dragons, seemingly dancing as they rose towards the heavens. The groom finally came for his bride. In the dark room, he approached his bride and roughly unveiled his prize. The corner of his mouth tilts upwards, pleased by the sight before him. Shenyu, afraid of what he was about to experience, closed his eyes tightly. The groom ordered him to open his eyes and have a good look at his new husband. Beautiful blue eyes opened, taking in the sight of his new master, the commander of the North. Shenyu carefully studied his new husband's features. Contrary to the rumors, The commander of the North is a handsome man and not at all terrifying. This man is beautiful. Impatient at his new bride's antics, the commander of the North raised Shen Yu's chin, forcing Shen Yu to face him. He asked his bride if he was afraid, to which his new bride affirmed with a nod. This excited the commander. A shy beauty in his arms, he has never met a woman more beautiful than this bride. In his glee, he grabbed his new wife by the waist and situated Shen Yu on his lap. The commander lifted a cup of wine from the bedside table and handed it over to Shen Yu. With pleading eyes, Shen Yu refused the cup while carefully pushing it away, trying to convey with his eyes that he is not used to drinking. The commander insisted that Shen Yu drink the wine. One eyebrow raised in dissatisfaction, which scared Shen Yu, prompting him to take the cup. Holding it between two dainty hands, he raised the cup to his lips and drank its contents. The wine lit an attractive blush on Shen Yu's face, and the commander quickly grabbed the cup from his bride's hands. Not used to drinking, the bitter wine made Shen Yu cough as the commander of the North announced that this was their love shot. The commander drank the remaining wine from the cup, and without any care, he threw the cup to the floor. Shen Yu had no time to think as his new husband pinned him down on the bridal bed, his wrists bound by the man's strong grip. When he opens his eyes to have a better look at the position he is in, he is frozen by the sight of a handsome face looming over him. The commander of the North did not waste any time to claim his bride. Their hands clasped together as the commander of the North took what is now his. It's only the first chapter, and it's already hot and heavy. Morning finally came. Bright rays of light shone through the paper walls as birds chirped from a distance. The new bride lies naked on his stomach on the bridal bed. A servant nervously knocks on the door as he calls out for the new concubine. He is here to deliver a message. The commander's legal wife, the princess consort, wants to meet the new concubine. Here comes drama. Shen Yu continued to sleep on the bridal bed, his body full of evidence of what transpired on their wedding night. The tranquil ambience of the commander's opulent estate was disturbed by several knocks on the door. The knock started soft but increasingly got louder in order to call the attention of the room's occupant. Shen Yu sleeps until later in the morning, but he does not feel invigorated at all. He wakes up with dark bags under his eyes and bruises all over his body. Rough night, he sat up on the bed, his naked male body exposed to the empty room. Did the commander realize he's a guy? Like, how can you not know? The voice, coming from outside, called him by his new name with renewed urgency. It is time to meet the princess consort. The attendant and trusted guard of the commander, Song Qing, introduced himself, presenting a bowl of medicinal soup to Shen Yu. Shen Yu silently accepted the soup-laden tray. Song Qing took the silence as an opportunity to explain what the medicine is for. He worked for the commander of the North for over a decade and was tasked to care for the women the commander slept with. 10 years, he'd be used to awkward encounters like this. They are given medicine after every time they spend time together with the commander to keep them healthy and available for another round. Shen Yu morosely thinks that this is going to be his life now. As the real Shen Yu's replacement, he must subject himself to the whims of a cruel husband. The bruises on his body remind him to not hope for more. Those are nasty bruises. The commander clearly went to town with Shen Yu's body. Song Qing reminded Shen Yu of the time. He is expected to greet the princess consort and is already running late. In early China, where some officials have multiple concubines, they are managed by the wife of the household. It is expected for them to get along well, but for obvious reasons, it isn't always the case. Shen Yu obediently followed Song Qing to the princess consort's mansion. Song Qing briefed Shen Yu on what to expect. It appears that the commander's legal wife does not take kindly to the concubines and that she may treat Shen Yu poorly. Song Qing tells him to bear with the princess consort's ill temper. They both arrive at the Liqing Yard, a grand place befitting the highest lady of the estate. Dai Ru, the princess consort, sat casually on a lounge chair. She is extremely beautiful. She sarcastically asked who arrived to greet her. Her tone and the way she carries herself betrays her pampered upbringing. Song Qing dutifully introduced Shen Yu and announced that he had come for the morning etiquette. A concubine is expected to pay her respect to the legal wives in the form of a morning greeting. They would usually have morning tea to get to know each other and for the legal wife to establish the rules. The princess consort stood and haughtily assessed Shen Yu from head to foot. She remarked that Shen Yu, the magistrate's daughter, is a pretentious woman who came to see her when it was already noon. She rejects Shen Yu's greeting as it is already too late for morning etiquette. Song Qing defended Shen Yu by telling her that the commander had fun with Shen Yu the night before and did not let Shen Yu sleep until dawn. The commander also ordered to let Shen Yu to rest some more. This irritated the princess consort. Hearing about her husband being enamored by a concubine angered her. She roughly grabbed Shen Yu to get a good look at his face. She was momentarily stunned by his looks. A rare beauty kneeled in front of her. His meek and quivering form adds to his allure. She clenched her teeth in jealousy as she accused him of being a seductress who took her husband's affections. She demands to be told how many times the commander took liberties with Shen Yu's body, to which Shen Yu frantically gesticulated a denial with his hands. As the princess consort's perfectly manicured hand tightened on Shen Yu's face, he tried to do his best in sign language to get her off him. Annoyed that the seductress is not answering her, she slapped him in the face hard. Shen Yu was thrown to the ground by the intensity of the slap. The princess consort mocked him for gesturing instead of answering her. She asked him if he was mute. Shen Yu quietly kneeled on the ground and nodded. He was trembling, afraid that the princess consort would hit him again. She towered over him and mockingly called him dumb. This gave her pause, but she broke out into hysterics when she finally grasped that her husband's new concubine was a dumb mute. The servants whispered amongst themselves, silently mocking Shen Yu. Shen Yu sat quietly, his head bowed, as he told himself not to cry. He is used to this kind of treatment. It is no different from the treatment he received from early childhood. To be used to being mocked and humiliated is just so sad. Leave him alone. The princess consort let out a yawn. Finally bored with Shen Yu, she turns her back, announcing to the room that she is tired. She got bored by the fact that a mute could not cry in pain and ordered Shen Yu to kneel on the floor all day. Shen Yu realizes that this is hell on earth, but for his mother's sake, he is willing to endure this sacrifice. When night came, Shen Yu continued to kneel on the floor of Liqing Yard. His already weak body is trembling in pain. The servants watched over his punishment, making sure that he did not have a moment's rest. The shadowed figure enters the opulent hall. The servants respectfully bowed to the newcomer and announced his presence. The commander of the North walks towards the princess consort, his handsome visage a sight to behold. The princess consort gracefully greeted him, but the commander is not looking at her. His attention is on his new concubine, kneeling on the floor. His eyes are only for Shen Yu. He asked her what she, Shen Yu, is doing in her mansion. Knowing that she had done something wrong, she hastily told him that Shen Yu did not give her the proper respect she deserved. Therefore, she took it upon herself to teach the new concubine some manners. The commander did not believe her. Looks like he's used to her doing this to his concubines. His brief moments with his new concubine taught him that Shen Yu is meek and well-mannered. So, how could his new concubine have provoked the princess consort? Dairu expressed her grievances about Shen Yu's lack of respect for her. Coming at lunchtime for the morning etiquette is an offense she took seriously. She explained that the new concubine, albeit new, is already acting rude, so she made her kneel to discipline her. The commander calmly asked if there was anything else that provoked her. She strongly expressed her distaste for the new concubine being a mute. The commander's blue eyes narrowed at this. She accused Magistrate Shen of tricking the commander by hiding the fact that his daughter is mute. The commander calmly told her that he was aware of it. Dairu can't believe her ears. She confronted and nagged him for his choice of concubine. If he knew that the concubine was mute, why would he marry her? She demanded that the commander divorce Shen Yu at once. The commander looked at her menacingly, displeased by her demands. Scared by his reaction, she addressed him meekly. This did not stop the commander from reaching out to wrap his hand around her. He chastised her for getting in the way of his private affairs, to which she choked out a reply that she did not mean to. She knows what she's doing. She's just sorry she got caught. The commander roughly threw her to the side, letting her go. The commander of the North reached out to the kneeling Shen Yu and helped him stand up. He noticed that his concubine is trembling from the severe punishment. The commander let out his annoyance and carried the shivering Shen Yu in his arms. Towering over the cowed Dairu, the commander of the North expressed his displeasure at her for bothering Shen Yu. This made the princess consort jealous, and she fisted her hand to control her anger. Turning from her, the commander warned her to not do it again. He knows that this is not the first time that she hurt his concubines and demands that this be the last time. He threatens that if Shen Yu gets hurt again, Dairu can go back home to the imperial palace. Dairu held back her trembling hands and bowed subserviently to the commander, succumbing to the threat. She watched her husband walk away from her, carrying his new concubine. Dairu stood stunned for a long while, silently seething. A maid approached her, telling her of the late hour. Dairu angrily slapped the maid, telling her to shut up. She's a piece of work. Dairu realized that the commander never favored any concubine before. She tried to calm herself while comparing her status to Shen Yu. She, a princess, the emperor's only sister, and the legal wife of the commander of the North, is treated poorly compared to a lowly magistrate's mute daughter. She chuckled to herself humorlessly. The commander, showing his care to Shen Yu, makes Dairu want to destroy the mute more. That face is up to no good. The jealous Dairu waits, her time will come. Shen Yu lets out a grunt as his consciousness leaves the land of dreams. He wakes in his new bed and is brought to coherence by a voice asking him how he is feeling. The voice is Song Qing, his vigilant new guard, who helped him sit up. Shen Yu tried to thank Song Qing through gestures. The guard quickly caught on that this was Shen Yu's way of expressing his gratitude. He let Shen Yu know that it is the commander who spared him from the cruel punishment and applied medicine to his wounds. This made Shen Yu grateful and happy. Besides his mother, no one has cared for him before. For a person starved of affection, the occasional kindness from the commander is something so precious to Shen Yu. Song Qing is quick to squash Shen Yu's disillusioned thoughts by letting him know that the commander hates when his belongings are damaged, which is the only reason for him to save Shen Yu. Party pooper. Can a guy dream? He cautions Shen Yu to not think too much of the commander's kindness. On second thought, maybe this guy is just sincerely looking out for Shen Yu. Shen Yu bowed his head in disappointment and nodded. It is nighttime, and a bird chirps from outside the room. The commander of the North sat on the bed as he watched his concubine sleep, caressing his beautiful face. The concubine grunts fretfully, while the commander watches as his new concubine is woken from his slumber. Shen Yu looked at him blearily, a vision of beauty and innocence. The commander is yet again enamored by Shen Yu. He joins his concubine on the bed, kissing Shen Yu senselessly. Later on that evening, Shen Yu sleeps on his lap. The commander continues to caress Shen Yu's head and contemplates how perfection doesn't exist. He thinks to himself that he can't help but care for Shen Yu. The commander of the North spends some of his time practicing with his sword. Shen Yu approached his lord to watch this beautiful man move. His steps are like dancing. Shen Yu watched him, enthralled until his lord noticed him. The commander of the North approached his concubine, and they kissed. With each kiss, each lovemaking, and each time they spent together, the commander's affection for Shen Yu grows deeper. Their relationship became more serious. Good for them. A banquet is held to mark the end of the year. The commander of the North would invite influential people to enjoy great food and be entertained by graceful dancers. A guest stands up from his seat to respectfully make a request from the commander. He has heard that the commander's concubine, Magistrate Shen's daughter, is the most beautiful woman in Daijing. He requests to see the beauty everyone speaks so highly of. The commander waved him off, telling him that his concubine is currently resting. The others jeered and egged him on. They suspect that the commander of the North is simply reluctant to show off his concubine out of jealousy. The commander laughed it off. He was seemingly nonchalant and used to having beautiful concubines beside him. He ordered Song Qing to bring Shen Yu to the banquet hall. Song Qing readily carried out the order. Shen Yu quietly sits at the drawing table, waiting for the commander to come. The silence was broken by a creaking sound at the door. It is Song Qing, carrying a tray of medicine. Song Qing tells Shen Yu that the commander invited him to participate in the banquet. He also presented Shen Yu with a tray of medicine and told him that they were gifts from the commander. Receiving medicine as gifts may be weird nowadays, but during this time period, medicine is expensive. Also, it helps in making sure that the commander's concubines are in perfect health to serve him. Shen Yu was elated. He can't believe that a person of humble birth like him can attend a banquet meant for high-ranking officials. Song Qing kindly tells him that Shen Yu can simply feign illness if he does not want to attend. The other officials will not dare push it should the commander refuse them a second time. Excited at the opportunity to please his lord, Shen Yu gestured that he wants to attend and asked Song Qing to help him get dressed for the occasion. Shen Yu arrived at the hall decked out in a fur coat and carved golden flowers accentuating his long hair. The guests are so astounded by his beauty that they can't help but spew out words of praise. They watch Shen Yu in admiration, exclaiming that his beauty is otherworldly and that they had never seen anyone more beautiful than her. The others congratulated the commander for his good fortune. Not only is he a proclaimed hero, he also rules the North and has a magnificent beauty beside him. Dairu hatefully looked at Shen Yu. She sets out a trap to embarrass him by suggesting that Shen Yu entertain them. She sought the approval of the commander. The commander asks Shen Yu if he has any talents and graciously tells him that he can choose not to oblige if he has none. Shen Yu bowed his head, signaling to the commander that he chose to entertain them. This surprised the commander as he was not aware of any talents that Shen Yu might possess. Shen Yu approached him and reached out for the guard's sword. Shen Yu danced to the jingle of the bells. It was the Lanling sword dance, which he executed gracefully and beautifully. The commander's guests started to sing him praises. One would think that this would please the commander, but it didn't. Consumed with jealousy, he is angered that Shen Yu never told him that he can dance so well. He believes that Shen Yu did this to attract the attention of other men. When the dance concluded, Shen Yu looked up to the only man he wanted to receive praise from, only for the commander to humiliate him and tell him what an embarrassment he was. The commander ordered him to leave the banquet. I just want to whack him in the head. Shen Yu kneels down on the floor, his head bowed. A pair of boots approached him and asked him why he would kneel at such a place. He rightfully guessed that Shen Yu did this to receive his forgiveness. His pitiful appearance annoyed the commander further. He mockingly commented that Shen Yu was so good at pleasing others. The commander moved quickly. Hearing the sudden movement, Shen Yu looked up only to find a hand roughly reaching for him. He was pulled by the neck. The commander's fingernails nipped at his throat. Shen Yu was about to have a taste of how cruel the commander can be. The commander draws Shen Yu closer, and he shivers in fear. Shen Yu felt pain, his vision dimming. He wonders if the Lord, who used to treat him well, now wants to kill him. Like a viper wrapping around its prey, death seems to consume Shen Yu. He closed his eyes in surrender. His lack of fighting spirit displeased the commander. He threw Shen Yu to the ground. The shivering Shen Yu abruptly sat up and silently massaged his throat, letting out silent coughs. The commander towered over him, accusing Shen Yu. He approached menacingly, which made Shen Yu want to crawl away from him. The commander decided that as Shen Yu is not afraid to die, he will make sure to grant his wish. He pushes Shen Yu to the ground and pulls out the belt that ties Shen Yu's robes close. He used the belt to tie Shen Yu's wrists together and threw the other end over the beam above them. This belt serves as a pulley to raise Shen Yu's hands above his head, while the commander pulls at the other end to raise Shen Yu higher. This scared Shen Yu so much that he can't stop trembling. The commander approaches a weapon case and draws out a sword. He points the sword at Shen Yu. The sound of steel clangs as the blade came close to Shen Yu. In a dilapidated house, Shen Yu dreams of his mother, who loves him. Her only wish is for Shen Yu to live. The sword halts just a few hairs and breath away from him. Shen Yu's sweet dream of his mother ends as he realizes that he must live for her. He remembered what another servant at Magistrate Shen's mansion used to say, "Men love it when a woman smiles. If a man tells me to smile more, I'll show him the creepiest smile that he'll never forget me." Shen Yu thinks of his mom, who was waiting for him. He raised his head and smiled. This stunned and angered the commander. He is enraged that his intimidation tactics are not working on Shen Yu. He felt like he was being mocked. He swung his sword, cutting Shen Yu's porcelain skin bit by bit. Small cuts littered his skin, deep enough to hurt but not deep enough to end him. Tears streamed down Shen Yu's cheeks as he endured this. The commander of the North looked at his handiwork and approached Shen Yu, his breath caressing Shen Yu's cheeks. He tells Shen Yu that he won't let him and that Shen Yu's life belongs to him. What a psychopath. And I thought his wife is cruel. I'm starting to think that the commander and Dai Ru deserves each other. Song Qing calls for Shen Yu from outside the door. He announces that he came to apply medicine to his wounds. Blood drips on the floor from Shen Yu's wounds. Alarmed at the sight, Song Qing quickly told Shen Yu not to move and quickly approached to bring the poor concubine down. Shen Yu, lying on his front, refused to be treated by Song Qing. Like a petulant child, Shen Yu did not acknowledge Song Qing's help. The troubled guard decided to leave the medicine on the table. He looked down at Shen Yu, feeling pity for this poor, unfortunate soul. Song Qing told Shen Yu that the other concubines died from torture but not from the commander's hands. Compared to Shen Yu, they were treated much better. Is that supposed to make him feel better? 'Cause it doesn't. Shen Yu was surprised at what awaited him the next day. 2 servants accompanied Song Qing, carrying rich fabrics with them. Song Qing tells him that these robes are for him. The commander received the cloud brocade as a reward from the emperor and ordered the servants to use the material to make clothes for Shen Yu. The cloud brocade is a precious material, and only 87 meters of it is produced each year. Sounds very expensive. Shen Yu was stunned. He is having whiplash at the commander's quick change in attitude. It was only yesterday that the commander was hell-bent on making him suffer. But now, he ordered servants to make clothes for Shen Yu. Dai Ru lounges in her leeching yard as servants attend to her. She takes a cup of tea from a servant's tray as she comments that the commander has not visited her for almost a month. She grudgingly tells her servant that the commander went straight to Shen Yu's mansion after coming back from work. The servant chimes in, accusing Shen Yu of possibly using black magic to lure the commander. Dai Ru carelessly drank her tea, not taking care that it might be hot. The hot water seared her tongue, and she called for the one who made the scalding tea. The trembling servant kneeled on the floor, begging for forgiveness. Dai Ru quickly ordered for the servant to be flogged to death for her carelessness. As guards took the maid away to face her punishment, the maid begged for mercy, but her pleas were not heard. The other servant brings Dai Ru a new cup of tea. She advises her lady to not be so mad at the other servant. She encouraged Dai Ru to think of ways to get rid of Shen Yu. Dai Ru thought up plans to get back at Shen Yu. She laments how the commander protects and pampers Shen Yu like she is some precious thing. She realizes that she cannot harm Shen Yu in obvious places. However, there are ways for her to inadvertently execute her plans. The mute can't tattle after all. What cruel things did she plan for Shen Yu? Dai Ru mockingly praised Shen Yu's seductiveness. She'll have the final laugh when she gives Shen Yu the opportunity to show what a tramp he is. Dai Ru called for Shen Yu's presence at the leeching yard. Clad in the brocade gifted by the commander, Shen Yu is escorted by Song Qing. Dai Ru opens the lid of her warm tea, preparing herself to face the vamp who stole her handsome, only to be stunned by what she saw. The vamp is dressed magnificently. It is the cloud brocade that Dai Ru's own brother gifted the commander. Unable to contain her anger, she threw the warm water on Shen Yu's face. How dare this tramp wear a robe that is meant for Dai Ru? She grabbed the lapels of the robe and demanded that Shen Yu take it off. Shen Yu was thrown to the ground while Song Qing quickly ran to his aid. Trying to calm the princess consort, Song Qing explained that it was the commander who ordered the use of the cloud brocade to create robes for Shen Yu. Dai Ru cannot accept this explanation as the cloud brocade is rightfully hers. The vamp does not deserve such precious material. In her rage, she ordered her attendants to remove the cloth from Shen Yu. Song Qing tried to reason with her, but Dai Ru cut him off. Song Qing may be a trusted official under her husband's employ, but she is the lady of the house. Song Qing has no say in her affairs. In order to appease her, Shen Yu stood up straight and removed the robes off him. He thinks to himself that the princess consort is probably right. Such expensive clothing does not suit him. It was foolish of him to believe he deserved good things like the cloud brocade. No, you're precious, too. You deserve better. He carefully folded the cloth and handed it over to Dai Ru's maids. Song Qing pleaded with Dai Ru to not be cruel to Shen Yu. This irritated Dai Ru more. The robe has been contaminated by the vamp, and Dai Ru does not want a disgusting thing to touch her skin. She ordered to burn the robe. Shen Yu does not understand the significance of the cloud brocade. Nor does he understand why the princess consort is enraged over a robe. He watched as the robe burned to ash. Menacingly, the princess consort turned on Shen Yu. Since Shen Yu is so obedient, she will reward him. Even with Shen Yu being so cooperative, she still has a lot in store for him. Her trusted maid, Jiluo, ordered another servant to go to the gate and alert them when the commander returns. Two maids planked Shen Yu on both sides and hurled him up from his kneeling position on the floor. Song Qing wants to intervene, but he has no authority over the princess consort. The maid told Song Qing that Shen Yu is being invited to the backyard and that Song Qing must wait in the hall. Unable to disobey the princess consort, Song Qing stayed put. Dai Ru and her maid led the way to the backyard while Shen Yu was being pushed from behind by her two maids. Dai Ru ordered Ziluo to carry out Shen Yu's punishment. She also ordered them to not let him sleep. Shen Yu kneeled on the cold ground in the yard. Without an outer robe, he sits outside, freezing. But Jiluo thinks the punishment is far too light for the vamp. Dai Ru has more punishment awaiting Shen Yu. Growing up in the imperial palace, she knows that there are many cruel ways to punish someone. There is one punishment that even the toughest man is unable to take, and that they would rather succumb to death than bear the torture much longer. Jiluo understood which punishment the princess consort meant and promised to carry it out for the princess. Tired and cold, Shen Yu sat shivering. Jiluo called his name to wake him up. The tip of the needle shines in the moonlight. She grabbed Shen Yu's finger and pricked him. Oh my God. No, the punishment carried on until late at night. Like a butterfly trapped in a spider's web, Shen Yu is unable to escape his fate. He begs for someone to help him. But being mute, he cannot express himself in words. If only the Lord would come to save him. That's just so cruel. The light from the torches of the commander's troops alerted the maid who had been guarding the gate. The commander has returned. The maid reported to Ziluo, who quickly shook Shen Yu awake. She tells Shen Yu that the commander won't notice the wound. As Shen Yu is mute, not even the commander will know what happened. Jiluo ordered the other maids to take Shen Yu back to his room, making sure that the commander does not see them. The commander of the North forcefully opened the door and entered Shen Yu's room. He notices that Shen Yu is positioned on the bed facing away from him. Thinking that this attitude is Shen Yu's way of showing his displeasure in spite of the gifts, he asks if Shen Yu is avoiding him. Shen Yu's movements were sluggish. He slowly turned towards the commander, his face marred with sweat, his form quivering. He sat up to look at his lord, pleading with his eyes. The commander looked down on him and raised Shen Yu's chin. He was surprised when Shen Yu reached out and rubbed his cheek in his hand. This triggered the commander and pushed Shen Yu down on the bed. He can't help but be enthralled by this beauty. He tells Shen Yu that he can give him anything. Whatever Shen Yu wants, he can get it for him. It's all right if Shen Yu cannot tell him now, and can have Songqing write what he wants when the morning comes. All the commander asks is for Shen Yu to not dance in front of others and to stay with him. As Shen Yu's face flushed with fever, the commander lets him know that he won't allow others to look at his concubine, for Shen Yu only belongs to him. Shen Yu nods his assent, which pleases the commander. He whispers in Shen Yu's ears, which makes the silent concubine blush. The commander demanded to be served. In exchange, he will treat Shen Yu well. The bright moon shines above the commander's mansion. A lone figure kneels on the cold ground in the yard. The figure is so fragile and delicate that his form shivers in the cold night air. A man steps closer. The movements alerted the kneeling figure of the man's presence. With hope shining in his eyes, Shen Yu looks up with pleading eyes to his lord and savior. Shen Yu reaches out with his dainty hand. But as the commander extends a helping hand towards him, the image of the commander dissipates in the wind and turns to dust. Shen Yu wakes up from his nightmare and grabs tightly on the thigh that he's been using as a pillow. It is the commander's. Realizing that he is curled up against the commander's thighs, he raised his head to look at his lord. The commander realized that Shen Yu is awake and encouraged him to go back to sleep. He noted that Shen Yu only slept for 2 hours, so he's been watching Shen Yu sleep all this time. That's sweet. Glad that he is here. Shen Yu moved closer to his lord and savior, bringing his lips closer for a kiss. The moment was interrupted by a voice calling for the commander. A messenger from the capital is waiting at the forecourt. The commander stood up to receive the messenger and promised to return to Shen Yu at a later time. A silence after the commander left saddened Shen Yu. His departure brought Shen Yu's fears to resurface. Feeling trapped, he does not know if the commander sincerely likes him. All he knows is that having him around makes him safe. If the commander is with him, the princess consort can't punish him. When the commander leaves, the torture starts anew. The princess consort's insults are unrelenting. She calls Shen Yu different names and accuses him of seducing the commander instead of enduring his punishments. Shen Yu is helpless as Dairu grabs him. The princess consort ordered Ziluo to continue with Shen Yu's punishment. As the maid brought a ceramic pot on a tray, she gleefully looked down at Shen Yu, telling him that it is about to start. She tells Shen Yu that the pot contains the rare poison of goo insects. The poison does not kill immediately, but the pain will make Shen Yu plead for death. She forces Shen Yu to swallow the poison. Shen Yu struggled and managed to throw off some of the pot's contents, but not before he was able to ingest some of the liquid. The goo insect poison is colorless and odorless. Shen Yu writhes in pain as the poison enters his body. The pain he feels is akin to 1,000 arrows stabbing his heart. Oh my God, I can't imagine how painful that is. The commander spent the night at Shen Yu's pavilion. He lays beside his silent concubine and spoons him from behind. As he kisses Shen Yu's neck, the skin is cold and clammy. He turns him around to have a good look at Shen Yu, who shrinks and shivers from his touch. Displeased, the commander asks if Shen Yu is afraid of him. Shen Yu's only response is the quiet quivering of his body. Unable to bear his concubine's reluctance, he orders Shen Yu to look at him. Affronted that his concubine would dare deny him, he placed his hand on Shen Yu's neck. The lack of air caused Shen Yu to cough. With the poison already deep in his system, the poor mute coughed up blood. The commander was stunned. The blood on his hand and Shen Yu's face shocked him. The sight of Shen Yu's deeming eyes startled the commander from his shock, and he frantically called for the guards. A figure, seemingly a boy in his teen years, followed Songqing nonchalantly. He complains that he is being rushed. It is no secret that the commander's previous concubines were tortured to death. The new one will surely succumb to the same fate. As the door opens to the concubine's room, the boy is surprised that the commander is in the room with the patient. He chucked the commander's presence to guilt. The commander must regret what he did to stay beside his latest victim. The boy realizes that the 10th concubine is an outstanding beauty. It is no wonder that the commander called for him to heal the concubine. The commander admonished him for being noisy and ordered that he save her. Notice that the MLA uses her as a pronoun for Shen Yu. The doctor placed his wooden case on a desk, clicking his tongue. This boy is the imperial doctor. He approached the patient's bed and then reached for the concubine's wrist. He was harshly told to not touch the concubine. The good doctor clicked his tongue on the commander's possessive behavior and reasoned that there is no way to examine the patient without touching her. He compromised by putting a handkerchief between him and the patient's skin. As the imperial doctor felt for the concubine's wrist, he noticed that there is something wrong with the concubine's pulse. The commander and Songqing awaited the doctor's findings. As the baby-faced imperial doctor removed his hand from the patient's pulse, he contemplated silently. Getting impatient, the commander asks the imperial doctor what he thinks of Shen Yu's condition. Now he switched to a he pronoun. The good doctor intrusively asked how often the commander sleeps with his concubine. Song Qing answered this question. He tells the doctor that for the past 2 months, the commander slept with his concubine every night and only allowed his concubine to rest at daybreak. The doctor gave the commander an admonishing look. He tells him that it is no wonder that the concubine is weak. The concubine's body is worn out and is barely alive. He asked the commander if he took care of his concubine by giving him tonics like ginseng soup. The commander readily answered an affirmative. The doctor thinks to himself that the commander's virility has not waned one bit over the years. Crossing his arms at the commander, he questions why those tonics did not work, as the beautiful concubine is seriously ill. Despite Shen Yu's lovely appearance, his bone years are older than his actual age. Although young, his body is weaker than older men. He is on the brink of death. The commander grabbed the doctor's collar and asked if the doctor could save Shen Yu. This rough treatment agitated the doctor, and he screamed for the commander to stop and put him down. The doctor brags that if he does not allow it, even the king of hell can't take a patient from him. The commander lets go of the doctor. Relieved that he is finally free from the commander's clasps, he tells the other servants in the room to leave. Song Qing respectfully bowed and excused himself. The doctor noticed that the commander did not move from his place beside the bed and obsessively watched over the sleeping concubine. The commander is really worried about Shen Yu. I hope that he will cherish him more. The caring look on the commander's face caused the doctor to shiver. He cursed inwardly and accepted the fact that the commander has no plans to leave the room. He tells the commander that he will start with treating the superficial wounds. The doctor commented that the concubine's body is full of injuries and asked the commander if he treated his concubine like an animal. While holding the patient's hand, the doctor discovered something unusual. He asked the commander if he found another way to amuse himself. He clicked his tongue and asked if the commander changed his torture method. From black snakes and candles, the torture device was replaced by needles. The commander asked him what he meant by needles. The doctor raised Shen Yu's dainty hand and showed him that there were puncture wounds under the nails. He tells the commander that there is no point in denying it as he is an expert doctor and can't be fooled. The commander became silent as his face gave a contemplative expression. Things are starting to unravel for our idiotic ML. He's finally realizing how Shen Yu has been hurt under his roof. Shen Yu has been seeking his help, but our ML has never taken the time to learn Shen Yu's sign language. The doctor mentioned that poison was even used. Used to the torture that the concubines went through in the past, the doctor did not even bat an eye. He examined Shen Yu's blood sample and told the commander that the stench can only be the poison of the View insect. The commander asked if there is an antidote, to which the doctor advised that the sinister poison had none. However, he came from a family of expert doctors. For 3 generations, his family members have been imperial doctors who established their clan's reputation. He is confident that with generations of study, his family has a way to control the poison. The doctor called for Song Qing to help him make Shen Yu take the medicine and bandage his wounds. The commander ordered them both to leave. The doctor said his goodbye, but before leaving, he gave the couple one last look. He wonders if the commander, Zhu Suan Shou, is infatuated with the beauty standing at death's door. So we finally learned ML's name. The commander of the North sat beside Shen Yu's bed. He lifts up a spoon to Shen Yu's closed mouth. As he poured the liquid into Shen Yu's lips, the medicine streamed down Shen Yu's chin. He talks to Shen Yu's sleeping form and orders him to drink the medicine. He scolds him and tells the sleeping beauty that he must recover so that he can serve him again. I'm pissed. This guy seems very selfish, or is he just trying to hide his true feelings? The sleeping concubine lay prone on the bed. His slumber does not appear to be peaceful. The commander looked down at his concubine with a frown. He is not used to caring for anyone, and his bedside manners leave much to be desired. He tightens his hold on the bowl of medicine as he rages internally. Shen Yu's unresponsiveness displeases him. It is now that he realized that he almost lost something precious. Impatient at the lack of progress, he shoves the medicine down Shen Yu's throat, but to no avail. Shen Yu, in his unconscious state, is unable to swallow. The contents of the liquid stream down his face, wasted. Like a child having a tantrum, the commander threw the bowl of medicine on the floor and ordered another bowl. He opened the door harshly and was met by a humbled Song Qing. Heavy steps drew nearer the loyal guard. The commander kicked his trusted subordinate in the chest. The commander ordered Song Qing to take care of Shen Yu, but the guard failed big time. Song Qing admitted to his failure to protect Shen Yu. The commander asked if this is the princess consort's doing. He asked why he was not made aware of it earlier. Song Qing reasoned that the princess consort is an aggressive and dominant person. As the commander showed favor to Shen Yu, The princess consort was jealous and berated Shen Yu several times. Song Qing went ahead and told the commander what the princess consort did to Shen Yu. Looking back, the commander realized that Shen Yu must have been asking for help when he reached for his sleeves. He looks down in anger and regret for ignoring his concubine's needs. The commander gave the order to throw all those who insulted Shen Yu to the water dungeons. Only the princess consort is spared. Song Qing obediently carried out the order. The commander will not let anyone get away with hurting his concubine. The commander did not leave Shen Yu's side. He downed the medicine and used his lips to transfer its contents to Shen Yu's slacked mouth. Now, that's creative. Shen Yu finally swallowed the medicine, which pleased the commander. He reaches out to Shen Yu's hands and asks the sleeping Shen Yu why his hands are still cold. Removing his outer robe, he used it to extinguish the lone candle in the room. He positioned himself on the bed beside Shen Yu, hugging him. The unconscious concubine moved towards him in his sleep and curled beside him. Moved by how fragile Shen Yu looked, the commander hugged his concubine tightly. Shen Yu dreams of his sweet mother, who praises him for being a good boy. He reached out to his mother, but his dream switched to a sinister nightmare. Mean servants ask him to take off his clothes. Shen Yu screams for them to stop, but they don't listen. As cruel hands reach out to grab him, he wakes up. He realizes that he is sleeping on something hard. He is on top of the commander. With a sinking feeling in his stomach, he dreads that he might have fallen asleep while serving him. He nervously sat up, but his weak body caused him to slip and plop back down on the hard body beneath him. The commander wakes and asks him if Shen Yu fears him so much. Shen Yu cautiously lowered his head. He can't help but think to himself that, as the commander's pet, it shouldn't be a surprise that he fears the commander. His only role is to please him. The commander looked at him meaningfully and grabbed Shen Yu by the arms as he told him to come closer. This moment seems so sweet. The meaningful gaze from the commander speaks volumes. Shen Yu followed his order obediently, but the moment was ruined by the sound of the door opening. Shen Yu quickly straightened up. Bien Shisi peeked inside and commented that the lecherous commander wouldn't waste time to have his concubine in the daytime when Shen Yu had just recovered. The arrival of an unknown face startled Shen Yu. The doctor continued to admonish the commander to treat Shen Yu more carefully and not let him die again. He chastised that no matter how good a doctor he is, he can't always save Shen Yu. He is no god, after all. Embarrassed at their position, Shen Yu quickly escaped from the commander's grasp and got off him. He quickly plopped down in bed and hid underneath the blanket. The commander let out an irritated huff and grabbed his outer robes. The doctor was disappointed that the commander would leave so quickly. He turned his attention to the beautiful concubine hiding in the blanket. The concubine finally sat up, the blanket still wrapping him, with only his face peeking out. Shen Yu remembered that Song Qing mentioned how the commander likes docile people. Disappointed in himself and afraid that he will be discarded soon, Shen Yu worries that he might lose the commander's favor. Shen Yu wonders if he disappointed his lord. His stupor was broken by the intrusive doctor, who asked him what Shen Yu was looking at when the commander had already left. The doctor has nothing but praise for Shen Yu's beauty and comments on how he is even more beautiful than the concubines from the imperial palace. He mentioned that Shen Yu is beautiful in his sleep, and now that he is awake, the baby-faced doctor is getting seduced by his beauty. He looked closely at Shen Yu and told him that the commander had briefed him about Shen Yu's muteness. Shen Yu moved his hands to use sign language to ask who he is. The imperial doctor introduced himself as Bien Shisi, bragging about his skills as a doctor and even exaggerating his capabilities. Shen Yu was happy that Bien Shisi understood his gestures. Finally, someone who he can communicate with Shen Yu's full attention on him. Bien Shisi asked Shen Yu not to stare at him. He finds it hard to resist Shen Yu's attractive face, but he does not want to be torn to pieces by the possessive commander. Bien Shisi opened the wooden chest he brought with him and commenced the treatment. For starters, he asked Shen Yu to remove his pants. Shen Yu looked at him, surprised at the request. Shen Yu looked at Bien Shisi dumbly, with the blanket wrapped around him. He hugged it tighter in fear. Bien Shisi reasons that he won't be able to treat Shen Yu's injuries if he does not remove his pants. Bien Shisi further explained that they have the same body parts, so it is unnecessary for Shen Yu to be shy. OMG, he knows. This revelation scared Shen Yu. He wonders if there are others who know his secrets. What about the commander? Getting impatient, Bien Shisi told Shen Yu to get on with it quickly, while using his hands to gesture at Shen Yu to hurry up. Shen Yu signed back, telling him that he can remove his pants himself. The doctor found Shen Yu's expression cute and touched his shoulder. Surprised at the sudden touch, Shen Yu pushed Bien Shisi back. Offended by Shen Yu's skittishness, Bien Shisi thought that Shen Yu was boring no matter how pretty his face is. He only wanted to apply medicine on the poor concubine, but Shen Yu acted so scared. Shen Yu being mute added to his being boring. After an hour, Shen Yu sat in his room alone with his head bowed. He turns his head towards the door as he hears a creaking sound. It is Song Qing who came to tell Shen Yu that the commander wanted to see him. Shen Yu thought to himself that the time had finally come. Shen Yu lied to the commander and hid his gender from him. He can't help but imagine the kind of punishment he will receive for such an offense. He imagines being decapitated, poisoned, or hanged. Shen Yu thinks that the commander may make him suffer longer, like the torture the previous concubines endured. Seriously, how could he not know that you're a man? Either he already knows, or he's the world's most stupid ML ever created in the history of BL. As Shen Yu follows Song Qing, he takes the sights around him with great reverence, like it is his last. He watched as the day turned into dusk. It is a beautiful sight. It is Shen Yu's first time to see outside of the mansion, and he believes that it may as well be his last. As they approached the water dungeon, a feeling of dread settled on Shen Yu's stomach. As they walked deeper into the dungeon's bowels, Shen Yu trembled in fear. Shen Yu figured that this may be where the commander keeps his prisoners. If Shen Yu were to die here, no one would know. He smiled sadly, accepting his fate. He thinks of his mother, comforting himself with the thought that she will not know what happened to her son and will believe that he is alive. Shen Yu's resolve was broken when he heard Song Qing address the commander of the north. His knees buckled beneath him, and he plopped on the cold ground, his legs unable to support him. Shen Yu bowed his head as the only man who caressed him tenderly now stood towering above him. In his haste and fear, Shen Yu left his room barefooted. The commander asked why Shen Yu is not wearing shoes. This confused Shen Yu. Why would he, a dying man, care if he is properly dressed when he dies? If the commander brought him to the dungeon for punishment, why would he care if Shen Yu is wearing shoes or not? The commander stooped down to lift Shen Yu up by the waist. He tells Shen Yu that the water dungeon is cold and that Shen Yu may get sick again. He chastised him as he would have to wait longer for Shen Yu to recover if he got sick again. The commander does not lack beautiful women to fool around with. Beauties are replaced like clothes. He puts them on and discards them as he pleases. This was the case until he met Shen Yu. He sits Shen Yu on his lap so that Shen Yu's feet do not touch the cold ground. The commander pressed him closer to his chest and told him to get even closer to him if Shen Yu feels cold. The commander does not only want Shen Yu's body, he wants more. This guy is head over heels for Shen Yu. Get me a man who carry me around. The princess consort angrily admonishes Shen Yu for being a vamp who seduces men. The commander acknowledged Dairu's presence and told her that now that she was here, they may start. A loud crash reverberated in the cold dungeon. From behind Dairu, a trapdoor opened from the floor while a guard pulled at a chain to pull something from the watery depths beneath them. A woman dressed as a maid is lifted by chains wrapped around her body. The princess consort realized that the woman was Ziluo, her most trusted maid. Shocked at the horrid condition of her maid, the princess consort asked the commander what he was doing. The commander covered Shen Yu's eyes, protecting him from the agonizing sight. The commander told the princess consort that she would find out soon enough. A guard approached Ziluo while swinging a blade. With each strike, Ziluo cried in pain. Ziluo begged the commander for forgiveness. She's finally getting what she deserves. I bet she did all those bad things to the other concubines as well. As the guard holds her to keep her in place, Ziluo begs the princess consort to save her. She has been the princess consort's nanny since Dairu was a child. She followed the princess with great loyalty. Dairu looked at her in contempt while angrily telling Ziluo that she couldn't save her. Ziluo is on her own. Ziluo pleaded some more. She confessed that she did all those cruel things to Shen Yu under the princess consort's orders. She can't believe that the princess consort would abandon her like this. Bad people don't have loyalty. Just because you were loyal to her does not mean she'll be loyal to you. Saving her own skin is Dairu's first priority. She tells Ziluo that she must be punished for her crimes and for trying to bring the princess consort's name to the mud with her. She told the commander that she was innocent and that Ziluo acted on her own. She even tells the commander to kill Ziluo. Shen Yu curled himself tighter against the commander while the commander raised a hand to Shen Yu's back to comfort him. The commander holds Shen Yu in his lap as he tells Dairu what punishment awaits Ziluo. Ziluo will be tortured by 3,355 cuts. In the dark, dreadful dungeon, Ziluo's body lay discarded on the cold floor. Unable to move an inch, her faint groaning is the only sign that she is still alive. The princess consort huddled on the floor, shaken by the sight of her dying maid. She screams for the almost corpse to not touch her. The sight made her so sick that she vomited. The commander paid her no mind. His attention was fully on Shen Yu's shivering form. He comforts Shen Yu and coaxes him to not be afraid. The commander reminded Shen Yu how Ziluo used to hurt him. The commander, who lived a violent life, believed that seeing Ziluo suffer would make Shen Yu happy. However, Shen Yu, who never held a grudge, did not find it a happy occasion at all. All he can think of is how disposable human life is for the commander, that he will face the same fate should the commander get tired of him. The commander is doing it the wrong way. This is just making Shen Yu more scared of him. The commander finally decided to wrap things up. He stood, still carrying Shen Yu with him. The princess consort pleaded for him not to leave her behind and admitted that she made a mistake. She grabs the commander's robe but is kicked to the ground. The commander ordered her to stay in the dungeon and to watch carefully to teach her a lesson. No matter how much Dai Ru begged for forgiveness, it all landed on deaf ears as the commander turned his back on her. As the commander leaves, Songqing tells him that the princess consort has fainted. The commander did not even look back and ordered Songqing to have Bian Shixi attend to her. In the leeching yard, the princess consort's sleep is not peaceful. Her dreams are plagued by her guilty conscience. She begged the ghost of her tortured maid not to blame her. It is the vamp who killed Ziluo. You did tell the commander to kill Ziluo for outing you. She woke up screaming, afraid of ghosts, grabbing Bian Shixi's slight shoulder to help her. Bian Shixi has no sympathy for her and thinks that the princess consort looks like a ghost. He tried to assure Dai Ru that ghosts do not appear during the day and asked her if she mistook him for a ghost. The princess consort composed herself, calling Bian Shixi a disaster and blaming him for saving Shen Yu. She laments that if Shen Yu gets pregnant, there will be no place for her in the commander's home. Bian Shixi, bored at this conversation, told the princess consort that no matter how good a doctor he is, he can't make a man conceive. The princess consort quickly lashed on to Bian Shixi's slip of the tongue. What happened to doctor-patient confidentiality? You little tattlemouth. Bian Shixi realized that he made a mistake. This made the princess consort laugh, an evil plan forming in her mind. The commander stayed in Shen Yu's room, reading through a ledger. He noticed that Shen Yu is secretly peeping at him and suggested that he be served if Shen Yu can't sleep. Shen Yu obediently crawled to the commander's lap, and as he reached out, he was suddenly told to grind the ink. Shen Yu. That's not what he meant when he said, serve him. The commander even teased him that if Shen Yu needs help sleeping, he can try to provoke the commander. Shen Yu waved his hand frantically to indicate that he'd rather not. This disappointed the commander. The commander grabbed Shen Yu's arm and positioned him to sit on his lap. He asked Shen Yu if he knows how to read, to which Shen Yu shook his head. He remembered how his mom's wage was only enough to feed both of them, and has no money to spare for his education. The commander saw an opportunity to teach Shen Yu new things and grabbed a pen. He started by writing the word si, which means the past. Realizing that he is not a good teacher, the commander became impatient. As commander of the North, the commander spent his life on the battlefield. He is an expert in taming wild horses, archery, and raging war. He never taught anyone how to read. He handed the brush to Shen Yu and taught him how to write the characters for the words he wanted to teach him. He took the task seriously and his face scrunched in concentration. Shen Yu finds this look on him pleasing, making him blush. The commander realized that Shen Yu has an eidetic memory and was able to rewrite a passage word for word after only reading it once. An eidetic memory. Wow, that's like genius level. An eidetic memory allows you to remember things in detail, even when you only saw a text or an image once. He praises Shen Yu for his talent, giving him the nickname, Yu. Oh, they're on a nickname basis now. Shen Yu noticed this new nickname and was even more enamored by the commander. If only his mother could hear that there is such a person who will not address him as mute or servant. His name is Yu. This touched Shen Yu deeply, and tears started to form in his eyes. The commander noticed this and commented that Shen Yu must be made of water. He also praised him for being so seductive. This flustered Shen Yu until the commander realized that Shen Yu liked his new nickname. For someone who never had a name, which is only called by his mother as Good Boy, by the other servants, as the mute being called Yu made him so happy. The commander told him that he would call them Yu from now on and offered to teach him to write his name for him. He wrote Shen Yu. The silent concubine looked at these two words like it is the most precious thing. Although Shen Yu is not his real name, he wanted to cherish the name and make it his own. Shen Yu looked at the commander, wanting to know how the commander's name would look like on paper. The commander did not understand Shen Yu's gesture until Shen Yu pointed at the commander's chest. The commander finally understood. Fluidly, he swiftly wrote his name beside Shen Yu's. The commander's name is Jun Suangxiao. After 10 chapters, he finally introduced himself to Shen Yu. These characters of their name look so beautiful to Shen Yu that it makes him happy. Jun Suangxiao laughed at his reaction. Shen Yu, overwhelmed by happiness, turned towards the commander to embrace him. In his mind, he repeated the commander's name. He never thought that he'd be worthy of the commander's name. He expresses his gratitude by kissing Jun Suangxiao and looks at him reverently after. The commander is not sated by a kiss, but he knows that Shen Yu needs to recuperate from the ordeal he experienced at the hands of the princess consort. Jun Suangxiao lifted Shen Yu up and carried him to the expansive bed. He ordered Shen Yu to sleep and promised to teach him again tomorrow. Knowing that he had more to look forward to, Shen Yu closed his eyes with a smile on his face. As the servants lit the lamps, Jun Suangxiao made a decree. He ordered Song Qing to announce it tomorrow. He wants everyone to know that Shen Yu will be his side concubine. Concubines have ranks, and some of them can be promoted to actual wives. So, I guess his side concubine ranks just below the wife. Song Qing asked if it would be appropriate to do so. Jun Suangxiao quickly told him that as the master of the mansion, if he deems it appropriate, then so it is. He ordered Song Qing to write a memorial for him and send it to the emperor to make the request legitimate. He will give Shen Yu the most noble rank he can provide. Song Qing realized that the commander must have fallen for Shen Yu. The commander only married Dai Ru due to the emperor's order, but he never promoted any concubines. By bestowing an imperial title on Shen Yu, even the princess consort won't be able to lay a hand on Shen Yu without repercussion. Song Qing asked what title the commander would give Shen Yu. Jun Suangxiao took a moment to think it through and finally decided. Shen Yu's title will be concubine yin, which means to hide. Jun Suangxiao has every intention to hide his concubine, so no one can snatch him away. Shen Yu is only his. He ordered Song Qing to relay the news to the princess consort. He will be the one to bestow Shen Yu with the title after a week. In ancient China, a concubine can be granted nobility or promoted. They get titles to elevate their rank. It's similar to putting a label on the relationship. ML is showing how serious he is, but it seems that Shen Yu will be the last to know. Song Qing asked his master if it would be a good idea for the princess consort to confer the title to Shen Yu. The princess consort has not been feeling well after what happened at the water dungeons. The servants of Leeching Yard sent a messenger to request for the Lord's presence. Jun Suangxiao feels no sympathy for Dai Ru and tells Song Qing to ignore the princess consort. He'd rather she stay in the Leeching Yard, out of sight. In Shen Yu's room, he fiddled at the hidden pocket inside his robe. Inside his robe is a red bean encased in a white enamel shaped like a cube. In the southern lands, the red beans will grow on the trees. When you gather them in your hands, it will revive good memories. Those were the lyrics to a song his mother used to sing to him. It is a song from Yunmeng, his mother's hometown. It is said that the people of Yunmeng are skilled at planting red beans. There is a tradition in Yunmeng. When a person reaches the age of 18, they will gather red beans and choose the biggest and brightest one. They will encase it in a dye, and once they meet the one, they will carve their lover's name on the bean. This way, their beloved will return their love. Shen Yu is full of hope. He remembers that in spite of his status as a servant, he hoped that he would meet his fated person someday. Before he left the magistrate's home, his mother gave him the dye. She told him that if luck shone on her good boy and he is able to leave the mansion alive, she wished that he'll be able to meet someone worthy of his love. With all of her love for him, she gave him a die on which he can engrave his beloved's name on it. She hopes that her good boy will someday find love and live happily for the rest of his life. Shen Yu raised the die to admire it. He thought to himself that his mother need not worry. There is no need for Shen Yu to find his fated person. The commander is kind and treats him well. Shen Yu vows to not make any mistakes. As long as no mistake is committed, the commander will be good to him. The commander slid the door open and came in dressed in a fur coat. He tells Shen Yu that it is snowing outside. Shen Yu hid the bean in his sleeves and moved to get up to greet him, but he was ordered to stay where he was seated by the commander. He reasons that his body is cold and he could get Shen Yu sick again. He warms himself by the lamps and calls for servants to take his overcoat off him. Curious, he asked Shen Yu what he had been fiddling with. Shen Yu looked shifty as he smiled to himself, clearly hiding a sweet secret. This made the commander's heart skip a beat as he likes this new side of Shen Yu. Shen Yu's being all cutesy. The commander can't help but simp. After teasing Shen Yu about his secret, he asked him to sit on his lap. He fished out a jade pendant with a carving of a dainty dancing figure from within his robes and showed it to Shen Yu. He told Shen Yu that the dancing figure is him and asked him if he likes it. Shen Yu does not agree that such a beautiful thing could remotely look like him. Jun Suangxiao confessed that the piece was created with Shen Yu in mind. He described Shen Yu to the craftsman and painter in order for them to capture Shen Yu's beauty. He elaborates that although the jade is transparent and delicate, Shen Yu's skin is far more tender and creamier. The eyes of the dancer on the jade are not as soulful as Shen Yu's. He tells Shen Yu that his eyes are the most seductive in the world. Compared to Shen Yu, the jade is dull. He remembers that when Shen Yu danced the Lan Ling sword dance, he was so graceful that he looked like a fairy. Blushing, Shen Yu wondered if the commander really sees him as an amazingly beautiful person. His heart beats fast, and he can't take it. He pushed the commander away and shyly covered his face. The commander figured out what Shen Yu is feeling, correctly putting into words that Shen Yu does not believe him. He tells Shen Yu that when he described Shen Yu to the jade craftsman and painter, they couldn't believe that there is such a beautiful person. Jun Su Ansho's description of Shen Yu is so dramatic that only a man in love could come up with such a description. Jun Su Ansho perceives that they do not believe him as they have yet to marvel at Shen Yu's beauty. He leans closer, lifting Shen Yu's chin up, his face intimately hovering above Shen Yu's as he asked if Shen Yu had been lying to him. Does he know? Is this when it would be revealed that Shen Yu is a guy? We'll leave it at this, Cliffy. See you in the next video.